Of the strongest group of married women that I know are the women who are married to your pastors, to the men on the pulpit. Because what these men put those women through are unbelievable. What your so-called spiritual fathers put these women through are unbelievable. There is no group of women that suffer more in marriage than women who are married to religious men. Like, I cannot believe. If you want to know how bad women have it in marriage, or what level of pain and tolerance women go through, endure in marriage, talk to a woman who is married to a preacher, to a pastor, to any man who is related to religion. The same ones who know every scripture, every verse. They are the worst thing ever. To you, they are leaders, yes. They are spiritual people, they are your spiritual fathers. But to someone's daughter, they are the devil. Because one...
Hey guys, hi YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So, a couple months ago, I usually watch Bodo Inbo TV, Auntie B, and she revealed that, she was leaving a marriage. And one of the reasons that she said she was leaving the marriage was because she was lonely. I believe she was married to also a pastor. And I feel like this topic is not talked about often. A lot of times when you see a lot of men of God or, pastors on the TV, the ones that are lavish, things look so great. Their wives are dressed up, looking nice. Their kids are looking nice. They have wealth, they have jets and all this stuff. So there's definitely women that are after a lot of pastors. But I've seen interviews where women that were married to pastors that have left the marriage or that are just talking about the realities say that there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes that is not talked about. So a lot of the women that have come on that are married have revealed some stuff that's very interesting about the stuff that you go through when you're married to a pastor. I Googled because I was really curious. I said, what are some of the kind of the cons to being married to a pastor? And they had categories. They said high expectations and scrutiny, time demands and neglect, and loneliness and trust issues. So I'm going to kind of go on each and talk about some things that I've seen on social media that people have mentioned. Okay. The first one is, they said the glass house effect. So this is where the pastor's family and the pastor's spouse and family is being watched a lot. They watch everything that you're doing. So a lot of times you've seen things where a pastor's kid did something or the spouse maybe wore something and the world went crazy. So the discussion back and forth on social media about, oh my gosh, did you see that? Like, he's supposed to be a pastor's daughter or a pastor's wife. Like, why are they doing that? So it becomes this thing that you're being watched constantly, your behavior, and that can take a toll on someone. So for example, when you focus on marriage, you have this woman that I saw, she said that your outfits are being watched. People are judging you on your outfits. I remember when Megan Good at some point was dating, what's his name? I forgot his name, but he was supposed to be a pastor too or something. People went in on her and started talking about her, how she behaves and how she dresses and things like that. Like, how are you with a pastor and you're dressing like this and doing this? It became a whole situation. And I think maybe it's one of the reasons why it led to their, them divorcing. The other thing was a lot of spouses have a lot of pain that they're dealing with. They have hidden struggles, and this has been brought up over and over. So for example, when the pastors are gone, they feel lonely. They feel overwhelmed because they're taking a lot of the responsibility at home when the pastor's gone. Because the pastor's jobs, a lot of times, it's not just a 9 to 5 where you clock out. A lot of them are doing work behind the scenes. So for example, they finish with the church, and then there's like, after things that they have to go to, like, volunteering events, or they have to go maybe to a funeral service or whatever. And a lot of times, sometimes it's the pastor's wife that stays home and does it. Sometimes they also have to go with them. So it becomes kind of like you're moving around and then all this is going on, and then you have to come back to church on a Sunday and put on a smiley face. It could really affect someone. The other one was they expect spouses to help out and to get involved, and it's all good. If you also go to that church, that sometimes there's pastors' wives that don't go to the same church and they don't want to be involved in the church all the way, but it's kind of like almost expected. And a lot of people will look at you like, oh, how come she's not doing this and she's not doing that? So it becomes this never-ending thing. when pastors are going to give, conferences, sometimes they have to travel with their wife to go there because the wife is a representative. So it's like, okay, you're coming into a trip, I have this to do, and you have to be there to show your face there. And this can also take a toll. Things people expect certain things that you're supposed to do because you're a pastor's wife. You're supposed to come there looking nice and have a smile face and be welcoming and talk to people. And if anybody sees that you're not doing some of this stuff, the people start talking. Okay. All right. 24/7 life. Like somebody brought up this, that pastors are usually gone. And if they're not gone, if they're home, sometimes they're doing fasting, they're doing prayers, and which is not bad, nothing wrong with that, but it takes away from the relationship. And a lot of women have mentioned that they're lonely. There's not a lot of intimacy that's going on in the home because they're just focused on this. So it becomes this struggle with the balance where the pastor is trying to balance everything, and it's a struggle. So some don't know how to do that. And I love how somebody said that because you're a pastor, everybody expects you to be a good human being. You're supposed to be a good human. It doesn't matter, like, while you could be the worst person in real life, people expect you to be a good person because of it. Just having that title, And so if a woman that's married to them comes and complains that, we're not intimate, or he's not giving me affection, it's like, but he's a pastor. Like, why would you have a problem with that? Like, you're expected to just be quiet about it. Don't go over there talking about your problems that you're having. Because at the end of the day, he's also a man. He's a man and a pastor. So it's like, that balancing thing can be difficult for some people, and they completely leave their wives and they abandon the family, because we've seen that where kids have been left because they're so focused on the church, and almost to an obsession for some, so that's there. Emotional emptiness is brought up. This is a big one. I know Auntie B stressed this, and she was like, you still have to know that when you come home, you're a husband. Okay, whatever that requires out of you. So it's not just like, I have to be at the church, I have to help people, I have to do this, I have to fast. You also have to know that you have a wife, and you have to act accordingly. So if you don't, you might lose that wife, because somebody's not going to hang around for years and years, especially the ones that did not sign up for it. It's one thing if you went on early on before you got married, whatever, you knew this. But most of the time, it's something that comes on. Somebody's like, I heard from God that I'm supposed to do this. They're called. And so you are pushed right into it, and you have to behave as a pastor's wife. And that could be really difficult for a lot of people. And they mentioned how the church becomes a priority. So you are kind of like, okay, because I love how Auntie B in one of the discussions, she said, okay, it's God, your husband, it's your wife and kids. It's not God and then church. And then you forget about all the other people, which people have done. They've done this. All right, loneliness and trust issues. So it says here that people may treat you differently. People may judge, and so it becomes hard to make friends, because really you feel like, okay, who can I talk to and really pour into and tell them what I'm going through as a pastor's wife? Because then people are watching you and they're gonna be like, but you're over here talking to me about this and that, aren't you a pastor's wife? People expect you maybe to go pray about it, and we know that works, but therapy can also help. Gossip and criticism. This is a major one, especially in a lot of Black churches, African churches. The gossip I'm telling you, people are talking. From you wearing heels to go there, to how tight the dress was, to, did you hear this? Did you hear about that? And the little issues that they're having, it starts being spread, and people are talking. So when you sit there, you come on a Sunday and you sit down, people are already like, well, did you hear that? It's going on in the church. And a lot of women have mentioned that this is something that's very difficult because people are always talking. And this is supposed to be, a lot of Christian people. Anyway, the other one is feeling very isolated. It says the couple can feel isolated from normal community systems. So sometimes it becomes hard for a lot of pastors' wives to really make connections, because now, or they have to make connections with other people that are religious, that are involved in the church or whatever. Because having regular people becomes really hard, because your views and what you're supposed to be as a pastor's wife, people might feel awkward being around you. Because now what did they talk about? You can't say, well, I went to the party last week, I was shaking and twerking. You might not want to talk to a pastor's wife about that. You might want to talk about prayer and how is the weather and keep it neutral. So it becomes hard when a lot of women have said that balancing act of being a pastor's wife, putting a smiley face on Sunday at church, to going outside and being, having your identity. Identity can be an issue. Because I remember, like, when you look at Auntie B Obodo Inbo TV, this is a really good example of that, where she was like, when you see her, she goes to church, yeah, but she's very, like, about living her best life. And she dresses up and puts on makeup and jewelry and all that and enjoys her life. And you could see that can be bothersome to some people, because as somebody who used to be with a pastor, some people would judge her and be like, oh, why are you dancing like that? Sometimes she dances on her videos and people were like, oh, wow, why are you dancing like that? Like, she got some comments, So this happens where people expect you to not really have this other identity. You're kind of tied to your husband as a pastor and you have to behave a certain way. So in general, I just wanted to really focus in on marriage, but marriage, when you are married to somebody that's a pastor, that's in the church, that things are also interesting, because now your identity is really tied to that. And there's people that are talking about you. You start feeling very isolated. You start feeling overwhelmed because you are literally forced to put on a front often to be this person. You have to be like bubbly and welcoming and for example, like Joel Osteen, people like that. They have to put a certain face on. And sometimes they also take on certain things in the church. And also they have their own thing going because they're tied to a certain person and they need a certain energy. And sometimes it becomes really hard, for women that are trying to have their own identity as well. And then, from the church, it becomes really difficult. And so a lot of people just were on social media warning and saying, be careful before you decide to become a pastor's wife, that it comes with certain things that you have to be ready for. If it's not your calling, if it's something that happened because you got married to that, then you got to know this. So let's say you don't really want to be involved in church. You don't want to go to church on Sundays. People are going to talk about it. Like, how come the pastor is coming to church and the wife is not there? Like, it's all this gossiping. So at the end, just be careful. If you want to get involved with a pastor, just know that it comes with certain things that you have to be prepared